tuning in to another episode of the Wellness Chat tonight. I'm Mel, the founder of Morinda Botanicals, which is a 100% natural skincare range for busy women. And I'm joined tonight by Mel Merritt, who is a self-care and life coach. Welcome, Mel.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm a bit excited. I haven't done a live interview for a very long time, so this is really cool. Thank you.
My pleasure. And we're both from Tasmania, so it's even more exciting because I have a lot of other experts joining me from the mainland. So it's always extra exciting to have someone else from Tasmania join me on these wellness chats. And so tonight our topic is living in alignment and knowing how self-care and knowing your true values can change your life. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the topic that we've chosen for tonight, Mel.
Okay, so I suppose to give some context for those that don't know me, I went through a period of time where I felt like my life was falling apart. And we've all been there. Those of us who are parents know that once our children come along, they tend to, well, we tend to give so much. They don't take it, we give it. So, and we give it thinking we are doing all the right things. And so a lot of people, and myself included, I found that I really lost myself in that transition into motherhood. And before I had children, I didn't have my kids. I was about 30 when I had my children. So I had a very, very busy job. I was always incredibly busy. People would say to me, "You're the busiest person I know, Mel." And I kind of went down this track of that was all I was. I was the busy mum and worker. And so long story short, after many years of that, I found myself in a really place where I was very, very low physically, emotionally, mentally, really low across the whole lot. And I really wasn't enjoying anything. I no longer enjoyed my work. I no longer enjoyed my husband. I no longer enjoyed my kids. And everything felt really, really hard. And so I was lucky enough to have just a chance meeting with someone, and they started to explain things to me in a different way that I had never understood before. And they started asking me, like, "What do you like, Mel?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. It's been that long since I have even considered that." It was like, I know I can tell you what I'm having for dinner tonight, and that's about it. So it sort of led me down a track of understanding me a little bit more. And I know this probably doesn't feel like self-care, but how it actually worked for me is when I started to understand the things that I liked, who I actually was, the things that were important to me, the things that I valued, my whole life really started to change. And the reason that it started to change was because when I understood my true values, and I'll explain in a minute what I mean by my true values, but when I started to understand what my true values were, I actually could start to live those values, and I started to do things that were in alignment with what was important for me. And things started to change. Like I really started enjoying being a mum again. And like I don't know as I'd ever really allowed myself to do that. And like my kids were, probably 10 at that time. So I'd been in motherhood for quite a while. And, I started reconnecting with my husband again on a level that we hadn't done for many, many years. I started to enjoy my job again. I enjoyed the challenges that it was giving me. So it was almost like it was such a surreal feeling, because I understood that when I was actually putting myself first and doing the things that I really enjoyed, my whole life just opened back up again. And what I found, so for me, self-care is really about understanding myself and living in alignment with who I actually am. And there's parts of me that I'm still learning to love. I don't love all of me just yet, and I'm still learning that. So it was really, really cool to understand, one, what my true values were, and actually start living those. And what I like, one of the biggest things, and it still spins me out today, and I was just speaking with a client this afternoon and was chatting to him about it, and what I really understood was when I started to place my self-care with myself first and my values, it changed my whole reality. Like, people in my life changed. Like, it changed my relationship with my husband, but my husband kind of almost morphed into this better version of himself. My kids became better versions of themselves. The people that were around me started to, like, you know, they started to see things differently. So it was really amazing to experience, like, by me living in alignment with what was important to me actually had a massive shift on not only me but everybody in my reality. So that was really, really cool. I just have to turn my heater off because I'm cooking myself now. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I suppose from a self-care point of view, the biggest thing that I started to learn and understood was, and you hear me talk about, like, my true values. So we all have things that are important to us, and a lot of this, especially us women, I say this only because I'm not a man, so I don't know this for men. I can only but assume. I assume it is the same for them. But as women, we get a lot of societal expectations that things should look a certain way. And a lot of the time when I actually, like, I've done a lot of work around values, and I have done for many, many years, and I've only just recently done another heap of study around values. But what I understood was the values I was living wasn't mine. So, and what I mean by that is we have so much expectation on us that I suppose the values that I thought I should be doing and the things that should be important was how I was living my life. But that was what was actually crippling me. That was what was making things so challenging and so heavy. And so it was like, oh my goodness, like, when I was doing things and everything was so heavy, it was just bogging me down. And because it was bogging me down, it was bogging everyone in my reality down. So I really started to understand the impact of me living my values and making that the most important thing for me had a huge on-flow effect for everybody else. So the self-care element, when it comes to it for me, I think the self-care is so varied, and there's the parts where it is really lovely to go and have a massage and have our hair done and have our nails done or buy a new outfit, all of that stuff. But for me, self-care really is the core of who you are and actually living in alignment with that. Because when you can do that, like, it actually makes everything else so much easier. It's like you stop fighting against everything and you know where you stand, you know who you are, you're confident in yourself, and you can actually really follow your heart. And it's really, really cool. Like, so many doors opened up for me. It was crazy.
Yeah. Can you give us a little bit more of a practical example so we can maybe connect the dots for ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way that I can describe this, it's a personal story. So it's a personal story from my own life. So I've got the most amazing mother. I really do. She's a beautiful, beautiful soul. She's so amazing. And people say to me, what's your mum like? And the only way I can describe my mum is she's a cross between Oprah Winfrey and Martha Stewart. And it's like, I don't know how she does it, but she walks through a room and it magically gets cleaned and everyone's smiling. And it's like, what did you just do? Like, I don't know how you did that, right? And so for me, like, I grew up with this, like, and I know not everyone is lucky enough to have had that experience with a mother. Now, I'm not going to go too much into this because that's a whole other topic, but essentially, so my perception was that that's what a good mother was. That's how you had to be a good mother. So it kind of became, that was the values that I took on. So they weren't necessarily my true values, but they were the values that I took on. So the way then in which I conducted myself was, I was like, okay, I have to be everything to everybody. I have to make sure my kids get put first. I have to make sure everyone else around me is happy and sorted and everything's okay, and that will make me a good person. That will make me a good mum. Now, the downfall of that, so I took that value on, right, as like I took it on myself. No one forced that on me. I took it on, and that's what we do. We take on these values. And then as that became heavier and heavier, and the weight of that was settling on me because it wasn't my natural true self. So my natural self then went into a state of deep rest, so depression. And it was like, because I was being, in my value system, I was being someone that I naturally wasn't. So when I started then to understand, well, hang on a second, that's my mum, that's her role. And when I started to understand, well, if I keep trying to be her, I'm actually going further and further away from myself. So I had to understand, hang on, that's my mum's value system. It's not my value system. So then I had to understand, well, what's really important to me? And one of the things, and I'm sure this is going to resonate with a lot of your listeners, is I was really torn between working and being a mum. So, and I was like, oh, to be a good mum, like my mum was always around. So I was like, oh, well, to be a good mum, I have to be always around. So then I kind of felt like, well, that means I can't work. And then it was like, well, but I actually really enjoy working. And I was like, I love going to work. I love interacting with other people. And for many, many years, I've worked in very male-dominated industries. But I loved going to work hang out with the blokes, and, you know, there'd just be banter and all of that kind of stuff. And I really, really liked it. And so then I felt really bad because I really liked it. So, but I started, like, as I started to uncover and do a lot of work around it, I worked out that that was one of my values. Like, I valued impact. I valued creation. I valued all of this other stuff out here that I really enjoyed, not just being a stay-at-home mum. And everybody's value system is different. Everybody's value system is different. So what I had to realize was that in order for me to show up as my best self for my mum, as a mum, I needed to put what I wanted first. So I needed to step into my values and own that, hey, I really like this. And what I found happened was, because I'd had a lot go on with my work, but as all of this was happening and I was stepping into that version of me, that person that is proud to enjoy their work and all of that, my work actually changed. And I ended up then stepping out of being an employee to becoming self-employed. So completely, like, when I owned that, completely changed my life. Like, I have a completely different life now than what I had 2 years ago, let alone one like 6 or 7. So that's probably the best example. And a lot of us do have these societal expectations of our values and what, like, a lot of people, and when I first start working with clients, I'll just ask them, like, what do you value? And they go, oh, definitely my kids, you know, if they have children. But then when we start to actually uncover it, it doesn't mean their kids aren't important to them. It doesn't mean their family or their partner aren't important to them. We just really want to uncover what is your true values, because when you can start to live in alignment with those true values, you actually just shine so much more. So and I'm going to do a little bit of a mind read here for you, right? But your work is truly important to you. And you can see that, like, your skincare range, and I know the story of why you started that. Like, that is deeply, deeply personal and deeply important to you, right? So it would be like, so how your values work with your self-care, it would be like you trying to live your life without producing your products.
Oh,
yeah, you just can't imagine that, right? Because you're living in alignment with that value system of yours. And that's why, so like, you would put in really long days, and like you struggle through the challenges because you love it, because you are really, it's so important to you. It's a really high value of yours, and it's almost like the struggles are worth it. Like the hard work, the long nights, all of that kind of stuff, it's already worth it because you really enjoy it. Whereas when you're doing a value and you're putting all your energy into something that is not necessarily something that's in alignment with your values, it really drains you out. So and that's that's where burnout comes from. And like, I've been through burnout, and it is so horrible because you're pouring all of this energy into something that's not actually yours. So I think does that sort of answer your question? Like, that's, I think, where the main sort of difference is, and that's a practical example.
It does. I think the burnout is, I mean, obviously there's a lot of different reasons why people get burned out. I do agree to some degree with that, but I also think there's a lot of other things that can cause burnout, because I'm just on the brink of another round, and it's just, sometimes it's just for your mind not to stop.
Yes.
Like for me, that's what's mostly causing it. Like I just even like I mean, I've got two businesses, and then even my other business, like it just got me almost into it, and I've been fighting it for the last 2 weeks, and it was fantastic having a whole weekend with no power, because like I had like this forced break, and you know, I wasn't able to use my computer, which is something I'm literally glued to 24/7. Like if I don't sit down on a weekend on my laptop, I don't know, I feel like I'm not living my life how I usually would like to live it, because it's just really part of, it's like literally glued to me. And so that was a fantastic way to avoid another round of burnout. It's funny.
Like, with our values in the self-care and the burnout, the way that I kind of, and you're exactly right, there are so many things that contribute to burnout. It's never one thing. It's almost like the straw that broke the camel's back, right? It's never one thing. And it's like, when we're like, exactly what you said with rest, and it's such an important message. It's understanding, how does the rest benefit the business? How does the rest benefit your value? So it's not looking at it as if to say, if I take this time, for me, it's costing, like, absolutely there is a cost. Duality is a whole other conversation for another day. But there is a cost, obviously, because you're not at work doing the stuff. And then there's the other side, that how does it benefit? So how does it actually invest back into the business by you taking that rest, by you going, okay, I'm going to stop, I'm going to have that time, even if it's like, I'm going to take the morning off, or I'm going to take the afternoon off the computer, and I'm going to have some recharge time. How does that actually benefit the business? Because then when you can understand that there is a benefit to it, it almost like gives you permission. And it's like, wow, hang on, this actually really does benefit this thing that I value so much, that I'd be crazy not to take this rest time. Because you can think that's like a really good way for people to give themselves permission to take that rest, to take that time out, to take that step back. So I think it's a really, really important message.
Yeah, I personally think you actually owe it to yourself to step away and take a break, because you know, it's just a sign that we haven't taken our self-care serious if we just push through and like really trying to force ourselves to get this done and to continue working. But when you actually do allow yourself to step back and just take a break, even if it's just for a day or two, you will definitely, like, the reward will be, you're more refreshed, you're ready for it again. It doesn't feel like a drag. It feels like you've done something good for yourself, and obviously not just for yourself, but it's a lot to do with your body and your health as well. And then just, you know, you're ready for the next challenge or whatever comes around, you know. So it's definitely very important to step back and take a break. And I think the body is a fantastic thing to actually tell us when we need to slow down. Like, as I mentioned before, I've gone through so many rounds of burnout now that I literally know the telltale signs, and I can say, no, I can't do this. I gotta stop what I'm doing and just, you know, rest and recover. And it was so good that I was able to do that, or that I just did it, forced break again. Yeah, it just definitely had a really, really positive effect on me. And even if it was not for the power outage, sometimes we just get overwhelmed. We get this feeling that everything is a little bit too much. It might not be burnout, but it can be just overwhelm. And again, the best thing you can do for yourself is to just not think about it for a couple of days. And God,
Yeah.
even if I don't ship orders for a couple of days, you know, the world isn't going to end and things like that. So
Yep. Yep. It's like, it is so true. And then it's almost like when we take that break, it creates space. And where that space is there, it's almost like that's where your creativity comes from. So it's like, so your rest and digest system versus your fight and flight. Your creativity happens in your rest and digest state, not your full on state, like not your fight and flight mode. So when you can, and that's why it's so important to be able to move into that and to have that restorative side of it, because that's where your creativity comes from. And that's where you start to understand, and you start to, you know, you might start to question things. You might go, oh, I want to have a go at this, or maybe this might work. Whereas if you don't allow yourself to stop, you don't get any of that. And you find that your creativity and your excitement and, you know, your lust for your passions, it kind of comes away a bit, because it's like, it's too much, it's too hard, it's too challenging, I'm too exhausted. So if you can have that break and step away, like, and I was exactly the same on the weekend. We were fortunate enough, we didn't actually lose power.
oh wow.
But this last, I know, I'm pretty sure we're the only house in the north of the state that still had power. But last weekend, because we'd still been so busy, I was like, I actually really need a rest, and I could really feel it. And I did struggle with it, I'll be completely honest. I was sitting on the couch and I was like, oh, I really feel like I need to be doing something. Like, this feels really weird just sitting here. But I said, no, I'm actually just going to sit here. And you know, I had a little scroll on my phone, and I had a little read through some books, and did a little bit of writing, and that was about it. And it was like, even in that moment where it was a bit uncomfortable, I kept pushing through with that, because it was like, actually, I know that my body needs this. I know my mind needs this. And then the next day, I slept better for one. So once I slept better, then I was actually so much more alert, and that creativity just came straight back. And then yesterday, hugely productive day, which was awesome, because I'd had that rest time. So yeah, and I think my message would be, like, if you can understand what's important to you, like your true core values, if you can understand that and know, like, we even have a hierarchy system in our values of what's important to us. If we can understand that and tailor our life towards that, it actually then allows for I suppose, and then having those breaks, it allows for so much more clarity. It allows me so much more clarity. And because you've got that more clarity, like, it doesn't mean we don't have challenges still. We're human. But because you've got more clarity, it's almost like you have more inspiration to actually go through, like to follow through and to create those things that you want, or to show up how the person that it is that you want to be. So yeah, I think for me, self-care really comes down to understanding who you are. And to understand who you are, you need to know your values, because otherwise you're in this space where you're just not sure what you're quite meant to be doing.
Yeah.
I think.
And do you have some tips for our viewers to work out their true values?
Absolutely. So the best, it's actually really funny, but there's a couple of really good things online actually that you can do for your values. But the easiest way to actually understand what's important to you is have a look around your house. What do you surround yourself with? What are the things you spend your money on? Like, have a look through your bank statement. What are the things that you actually spend your money on? Because that will show you where your values are, the things that are important to you.
Online shopping.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, because it gets really cool. Like, when you start to see, wow, okay, this is currently what I'm making important to me. And then you get to ask yourself, is this actually true? Like, so for example, so for a period of time, like, and this was before I sort of started any personal development work, everything that was surround me was work focused, or children focused. Okay. I didn't love my job back then. I definitely didn't love my job back then. I was doing it for an income. And everything else was children focused. So I could clearly see by my surroundings and what I was spending all my money on, and the things that I was doing, what I was making important. And then when I actually sat with that, I got to ask myself, is this true? Like, does this actually feel true for me? Like, am I excited by this? And for me at that stage, the answer was no. So then I truly believe with your values, you do need some guidance with it, and you do need some help, because you actually need someone to ask you some pointy questions and really draw that stuff out of you. For no other reason than sometimes we can't see our blind spots. Like, I can't see my back. I need someone to tell me what's on my back, right? So it's like, if you can actually have a look around, and then even if you sit with a friend, a coach, a mentor, whatever, right? Sit down and then get them to ask you, does that feel right? Are you happy that this is your values that you're currently living at the moment? And then what you can do, if the answer is no, that's when you really want to start and have a look and go, okay, what are the things that I do want to start including? You know, for me at that time, it was health. I needed to really start focusing on my health, because I had always, before children, I had always been incredibly healthy, and I'd been fit, exercising, all of that stuff, and I'd let all of that go by the wayside. So it was like, okay, I need to bring those things back in. Then I also looked at what were the things that I was doing years ago? What were the things I was doing as a kid that I loved that I'm no longer doing? Now, obviously, I'm Barbies out and play Barbies. I'm not necessarily going to get my craft out and build a little house out of craft, but what was it about those things that I loved, and how can I start doing that kind of stuff now as an adult? So it was like looking at those kind of things. So what did you do back then that you could bring into the now? And for some people, it will be crafting. It might be they might have used to knit with their nan or something, and it's something they could still do today. So it really is starting to look around at how. So I guess to try and keep it into a simple dot form, you'd go, what are you spending your money on? What are you surrounding yourself with? So what subjects, books do you buy? What topics of magazines do you buy? How do you spend your days? Like, what are the things you're doing in your day? And then look at that list and then ask yourself, okay, does this feel right? Because you'll know, like, it'll either feel restrictive or it'll feel expansive. So that's the easiest way, I guess, to tell. If you're not in alignment with your values, it'll feel really restrictive.
Yeah.
So, and then it'll feel expansive. Yeah. So I guess that would be my tips to start.
And it could be just one thing at a time. It doesn't have to be, bringing it all back from the past or anything like that. And it can take a little bit of time to dig it all up as well. I've actually gone through this myself. I found myself completely lost as a business owner, and completely forgotten who I was before I started the business, because you submerge yourself so deeply into what you're doing that it's so easy to forget who you were as a person before. Business, motherhood, wife, partner, whatever it is. And it took a while to dig it up, and I actually made a mental note to never forget that again.
Yeah. it's like so many of us do it. We become like the things that are external to us, that's who we feel like we become. So especially for business owners, they feel like they are their business. So me, like I went through, so I'd worked for the previous company that I worked for, I'd been there for 17 years. And then when I actually left, it was a really long time. And when I left, I was kind of like, well, who am I now that I don't work there? I was even to the point of, I was like, what am I going to talk to people about? Because I just used to talk about work, and now I don't have that anymore. So what is it now? So it did. And it can feel lonely when you first sort of start in that little space of trying to understand yourself a little bit more. It can feel uncomfortable. It can feel a bit wobbly. And it's almost like, I think my biggest piece of advice for someone who's stepping into that space and really going down that journey of trying to understand themselves a little bit more so they can care for themselves better is to do it with grace. Like, give yourself some grace and compassion. And we're all human. We are all going to screw up. We're not going to get it right all the time. Take it in little baby steps. And don't beat yourself up if you make a mistake, because there's only lessons. There's no failures. So, yeah.
Exactly. Well, that was fantastic, Mel. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and tips. If anyone has any questions, or if you're watching the replay, feel free to put them in the comments below, and Mel or myself will get back to you at a later stage. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. It's been an absolute pleasure having you, Mel. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor to come on here, and yeah, I'm looking forward to the rest of the interviews in the series. It's going to be great.
Amazing. Thanks again.
Well, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.